welcome. You're in for a treat tonight. My guest is Tom Lieberman, and many of you will know Tom's name and who he is and what he does. Some of the things he does a lot of things, so we're going to kind of cover the waterfront and talk about a lot of his work. He is a songwriter, he is a singer, a guitar player, a ukulele player. He is a music producer. He has an album that was one of the top 10 a few years ago. He is a film producer. Do you remember Sweetland, the independent film that won the Spirit Award, and a wonderful film? I want to ask him about that because it's so timely again now. Tom was also a producer of Sesame Street Live and Prairie Home Companion, I can't forget that, 10 years with Garrison as a writer and performer. So welcome, Tom.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. I wanted to start and just talk a little bit about your early days. I read that your grandmother was a radio singer.
She was.
Back in the 20s. Tell us a little bit about her influence on you and how you...
My dear grandmother.
Yes.
She was amazing. She was an amazing woman. This is my dad's mother.
Okay.
And she was a St. Paul girl, through and through. And in the 20s, she was half of a singing duet, or duo. Her name was Julia, and her partner was a young man named Julian. And they were Julie and Julie, and they were singing Sweethearts. And it was sort of a juvenile act, what was referred to as a juvenile act. But she told me stories about singing in the old days of KSTP and, you know, Mr. Hubbard.
Right.
And WCCO. And she toured in vaudeville for a short time as well. Before settling down. And
so as a little boy, did you have a piano? Did you have a guitar? When did you start with...
We had a piano in our house, and my sister plays beautifully. I play not so beautifully, but I play a little bit. And it was through the piano that I came to the guitar. I would say, to answer your question about my grandmother's influence, it was a musical household. She was always singing. And my father was very enthusiastic about classic radio and the old days of live radio. And you know, you'd mentioned my involvement with Prairie Home. I think early on when I first met Garrison and became aware of Prairie Home Companion, it really resonated to me personally. I just understood what he was doing because it was nothing new. I mean, there's a lot about it that took the form and played with it, but the essential show was an essential show, you know.
And some of that vaudeville feel, wasn't there?
Very, very much so. I mean, it was in an old vaudeville theater.
Right.
And yeah, and my grandmother was living back during those days. This is now late 70s, early 80s. And she was very, very into it. She loved it.
So she lived to see you become successful as a musician.
Let's just say she lived to hear me sing on the radio.
That would be a big thrill.
I wouldn't want to overstate
it.
Yes.
That'd be a big thrill. In terms of doing all these things that I mentioned,
yes,
would you say that you have fulfilled your dream of working sort of independently and creatively? And I ask that because that's not an easy thing to do. And I'm guessing you were discouraged by some family members early on.
Discouraged?
In terms of, is that a way you can make a living? That kind of question.
I think there were those moments where people asked those very, very pointed questions. But honestly, I look back at the years when my parents might have interceded and said no, law school, or whatever they may have said.
Right.
But they didn't. And they were unbelievably supportive of me.
How great. I mean,
how great.
Yeah,
I mean, it's amazing. And now, having children of my own, I am even more amazed at how supportive they were.
And realize kind of what they were giving to you.
Exactly. And I think that they, you know, they understood that life is to be lived, and it should be lived in the way you want to. You know, it should be constructive. It should be, you know, you have to be a good citizen. You know, they lived very, very wonderful lives, and you have to keep life and limb together as well. So,
right.
You know,
That's
everything sort of
the
changed
other part
when
of the equation.
Right, when children came into the picture, I'd say my artistic dreams, my more artistic dreams perhaps took a backseat to my more practical dreams.
And is that then when you got into the producing part of your life?
I would say so, yes. You know, I'm a musician by trade, and I started on the West Bank in the Coffee House Extempore singing my songs in high school. And I was very fortunate to meet a lot of extremely supportive musicians, and it was wonderful.
Did you play? Where did you play there? Because, I mean, that's really now a historical period of time, isn't it, in our city, Minneapolis history?
On the West Bank?
Yes.
Well, yes, it was an amazing time. This was the Coffee House Extempore, which was, of course, on the corner, or off the corner
you said that,
of Cedar and
yeah.
Riverside. Yeah,
right.
And then the Riverside to a lesser extent, but also at the Riverside Cafe. Those were really the places. There was a cooperative of a number of musicians who teamed together to sort of share booking contacts and promotional things like that. A wonderful group of people called the June Apple Musicians Co-op, and I would say around the mid to late 70s, almost all of them had been on Prairie Home Companion, and many of them comprised the Powder Milk Biscuit Band of that time.
Right.
Just to date myself, but I was, you know, sort of a fresh-faced young kid at that time, and I think they finally got around to me and introducing me to Garrison. So that's what happened. Now I started that as a musician, but then those days, you know, I was doing a lot of different things and trying different things, and I realized that there was a lot to putting on a show like that, and it just I think it sort of matched my temperament. I wouldn't say I'm the most organized person in the world, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the least organized person in the world.
Somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle. But I have, you know, I appreciate what the artists and performers are there to do, but I also fully understand they can't do that if the producers aren't doing their job.
Right.
And so I
Gotta
saw
have some business sense.
Exactly, they have to take care of business. So I know, you know, through the years I've seen a lot of people who kind of pick a lane and they decide they're going to be a creative type or they're going to be a business type. And I don't really feel like they're all that mutually exclusive.
So yeah, you've been able to really use both left and right brains, haven't you, in a real clear
I'm just trying to use my brain. I'm not sure which side I'm accessing at a given moment.
Well, they cross over, right?
Yeah, I hope so.
So you said high school at Coffee House Extempore, and how, like, sophomore, junior, senior? I mean, there's a big difference in maturity in those years.
I'd say the driver's license would have been would be the watershed
so
event.
About 16.
Yeah.
And then how old were you when you started working with Garrison?
That was 70. I believe it was 76.
Okay.
So I was 19.
Okay, so you were really one of the young ones on that set then, weren't you?
Yeah.
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 And were you singing on stage at that time with him?
Yeah, I was writing and performing my own songs.
Oh, you were, okay.
And so I did that.
What a dream job, Tom.
It was a great opportunity. Yeah. And again, you know, I was so fascinated by the show itself and what, you know, it was again, this classic format. I mean, what's new about people standing on a stage doing shows?
Right.
But it also had the satellite link, which very new technology at the time, and it was being beamed up to, you know, to stations all around the country.
Right.
So it was kind of an amazing thing. But then I saw all these people walking around with clipboards, and they seemed pretty sane. And I realized they were producers, and I said to myself, I've got a clipboard. Maybe I could be a producer too.
So that intrigued you too.
It did, because, you know, I was very interested in creating the right environment for the performers.
So again, that kind of creative side, and then a little more of the business organizational.
Well, I think all artists, performing artists, absolutely are have to have some sort of sense of their business, whether
Or
that's
the
just...
ones who make it.
Well, yeah, hopefully. But I think there has to be someone who is kind of crossing the T's and dotting the I's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an important part of it. And in those years with Garrison, did you continue singing the whole 10-year period?
Yeah.
And playing?
Yeah, we tried different things.
What was the mood like there in terms of what you ended up seeing the night of the actual taping compared to the rehearsal time? Was there a lot of shifting and
the show would change, yes. The show would change. Around that time, the producer was a woman named Margaret Moose.
Right.
And Margaret is an excellent producer. And I think the best answer I have to your question is to throw myself under the bus, because I remember a rehearsal where I was just sort of walking through it, wasn't really concentrating, and I wasn't really doing it the way one would do it for the show. And Margaret took me aside and she said, "Tom, your rehearsal has to be exactly what you're going to do on the show. You have to take the rehearsal seriously, because we're doing it for time, we're doing it for all of the technicians who need to hear what's going to happen and see what needs to be, you know, what it's going to be. So if you don't take it seriously, we're not doing it right." So I took that to heart, and I really have remembered that.
Upped your game there, right?
I did. It was an important lesson. So, and I think it helped me as a performer.
And so why did you end up leaving that show?
Well, I mean, I would have written that show forever had it been possible. But, you know, many of the fabled personnel changes.
Right.
You know,
so
this was '86. Those were pretty rocky years for the show when I finally had my last appearance.
Okay. Was there some grieving that went along with that, with losing that place?
I'm grateful. I'm grateful to have had the experience, and happy to have had other things to go to and other roads to travel. So.
And you certainly have had other roads to travel. I mean, one of my thoughts as I was thinking about your life this week was kind of how you manage having all these different shoots off the stem, you know, and keep all these moving parts moving.
Sure.
Is there some mental strategy you can share with maybe young people who say, well, I want to do multiple things too?
Well, I came to a point where I started to understand that I couldn't do everything I wanted to do, and that it's just if you're absolutely everything, then what are you? You know, you have
Jack of all trades.
You have to be something. And I started to look at those things that really gave me the most joy, and I realized that there were certain common themes that went through my work. That is to say, work that I chose to do as opposed to work that maybe found me or I was assigned. But even so, even with that work, it started to take on certain, I would see patterns. I would see that people were hiring me for a specific skill or to do a certain thing. And a lot of that was sort of my musical background. And I've always been a songwriter, and I hope I always will be, because I think that when all is said and done, that's how
sort of
I identify.
Center of your
I mean, even
creative core.
So certainly for Prairie Home Companion, even though I worked on the production staff, there was still, you know, it's all in service to the creative product. So scripts and songs and things like that. So I've always been a producer that really appreciates the creative side, and then as a creative, I really appreciate the production side too. So I think that songwriting is the most central thing. If you look at the film that I worked on that you mentioned, Sweetland, one of the things, I was one of the producers. It was an independent film, so we all kind of got a chance to do everything, because it being a truly independent film.
Really exciting venture.
It was an exciting venture. I had been producing for my friend Ali Salim for quite a few years.
Who is the director? The
director and writer of the film. And
so is he a Minnesota guy?
He is. Actually, Ali and I knew each other. I was his Pee Wee football coach.
Oh my gosh.
At Lyndhurst Park.
Oh my goodness.
That's why he's a film director today.
Oh, that's a great,
so
unusual. You'd say, what do you think is the origin of this relationship? And list 3 or 4 things. They'd never pick that one, would they?
Yes, he's a Minnesotan. And, but again, the music was a big thing. I was the music supervisor for that film.
Right.
And
that film won so many awards. I mean, I mentioned the Spirit Award, but that was just one of several big awards. I mean,
it did get some attention, which was lovely. And some of the things I liked, one of the things that gives me the most pride is that it was also put on the list of the top 10 films of the year by the Los Angeles Times, the New York Times, the Village Voice, and Entertainment Weekly magazine, which I thought was a pretty good range right there.
That is, I mean, that's as good as it gets, isn't it, in terms of kudos?
It was good. It was very, very good. And also I was delighted when it was named one of the sexiest films of the year. And this is a PG film.
Yeah, but there is, I remember some of that mood, and it is
It's a very romantic film, of course, yeah.
Tell, for those of you who might not know Sweetland, just give us a quick synopsis.
Sure.
Because it feels like now, more than ever, it's got a real timely connection to what we're dealing with.
Very much so.
In terms of immigration.
Yeah, it's basically the story of a mail-order bride who comes to the United States after World War I. So she is, unbeknownst to her husband-to-be, she's a refugee from Germany, from the war, and Germans were far out of favor at that time. So this Norwegian bachelor farmer greets this German refugee and realizes, and is told that they can't marry because she's German. So most of the film takes place in 1919. It starts in present day and then flashes back to the 60s and then flashes back to 1919. So that was just as a sidebar, my advice to young filmmakers is if you're going to make an independent film, be very careful about what you choose to make because period detail is expensive.
I bet.
Yeah,
I bet.
that was a big undertaking, just trying to make it correct for the period.
Well, it was a wonderful film. If you haven't seen it, you have to try and get a copy and check it out. So songwriting is your basic core love right now, and tell us what you're doing right now in terms of that particularly.
Yeah, and I think this relates to your question about, there's so much to do in one's life. I've sort of focused on that one thing. One thing that its songwriting has led me back to is my old band from 40 years ago.
Rio Nido.
Which is called Rio Nido.
Which I didn't mention, but I should have.
Right, well, yes, 40-some years ago now, back on the West Bank, I met a guy named Tim Sparks, and he introduced me to a wonderful singer named Prudence Johnson, and we all shared a love for old jazz and decided to become a vocal trio. And it was a great ride for a long time, and then I decided I needed to leave the group for some personal reasons, and they went on to have quite a distinguished career, and then before hanging it up after some years. And then about 5 years ago, Tim and Prudence and I each individually were invited to perform at a benefit performance for Clean Water Action.
Not as a group.
Not as a group, as individuals, because we all continue to play.
Right.
And the organizer knew us all, of course, and asked if we would consider doing a reunion show. So we did, and it was fun. And we liked what we were doing. We talked about how things have changed and how maybe our musical identity is different today than it was some years ago. I think, back when we started out, when you had people, in their early 20s doing music that was 40 years old, it was charming. And now, fast forward 40 years ago, and you have people in their early 60s or later 60s doing music that is 80 years old. It's not quite so charming.
Well, it depends on who the audience is.
I have words that I might use to express what it feels like. But a lot of our music has changed. We are mixing it up quite a bit, and a lot of our repertoire is original as well. So, and to me, that's the gift, is to be able to create new material.
And do it as a trio, too.
Yes.
I mean, that's another way to do it, isn't
right.
it?
That's another thing for me in writing my music. It's all well and good to sing one's own songs, but I don't necessarily write them for my voice or for myself. I like to be able to put them into the care of a stylist, you know, who can really take the song and do something with it. So to have Prudence or other people sing my songs is really exciting for me.
And you performed at the Dakota as a trio.
Yes.
Are you performing this year in some places that we can look for?
We hope to certainly play the Dakota again. We've been playing at a lovely place up in Fridley called Crooners.
Oh, right. Crooners is
and they're doing all sorts of good things up there as well.
A lot of big name people come in.
And then I'm also playing some solo engagements and small groups. Tim and I have been doing some shows together as well.
Okay.
But most of those shows will be original material these days.
What's the best way, Tom, to track that and to find out? Go to your website?
Yes, my website, which is at liebermania.com.
Liebermania.com.
And you
we'll
can
put
subscribe.
that on the screen.
Yeah.
When you write a song, I mean, of course there are many different ways to write music, but what's your kind of pattern? Because it's such a creative thing and so unique to each songwriter, but what's your pattern, if you could define
it varies.
Does it vary a lot?
I think the challenge is in finding a pattern, is finding the key to the song and finding the structure.
Do you start with the words or the music first?
I tend to look at it, it's a hook, and it's either a verbal hook or a musical hook.
Okay, could go either way.
And I think if you find that first, you can build on that.
Right.
And then it's sort of like the sculptor who is chipping away everything that doesn't look like what he's trying to make a sculpture of. You know, you just try things, you look for different rhythms, and yeah, it's a lot of editing, of course. So, to me, they're the songs themselves, but also the arranging and performing, certainly with people like Tim and Prudence, it gets to be where you're really trying to polish the stone, and you want a good stone to start with, so a good song, and then you want to just make it really shine.
It's so neat to think of you back together again, because, I mean, that doesn't happen a lot in life, that a group is strong and then parts ways and then reconnects. It's got to be a great feeling.
It's a bit interesting. I mean, we're all very much involved in our lives.
Sure.
There's no shortage of things for us to be doing. We all have families. We all have careers. We all have life.
Hold in a lot of ways.
Exactly. So I have to say that we have to sort of meet it on its own terms. We try to push it and try to push ourselves and make it happen, but it kind of takes on the rhythm that it takes. But it's been great.
A friend of mine who's a pretty well-known actor had this saying. He said, "Mary, you can't push the river," and that kind of fits with Rio Needle, right?
You know, it's been a hard lesson to learn, but it is its own thing, and it'll take the rhythm that it takes.
Kind of has a life of its own in a way, right?
And I accept that.
We've just got a couple minutes left, but can you just give us a thumbnail description of Luke the Uke?
Luke the Uke.
I can't say it quickly.
Luke the Uke.
Luke the Uke.
Well, Luke the Uke is a plucky little soprano ukulele, and he lives on a place called Ukulele Lane, and Ukulele Lane looks amazingly similar to 13th Avenue in Northeast Minneapolis. But his original home is from the islands, of course, of Polynesia, in Ukulele Lane. So you have Ukulele Alley, 13th Avenue, urban landscape, and then Ukulele Lane, the islands of Polynesia. So Luke came over to the mainland back in the early 20th century, and he's an old vaudeville trooper, and he's a talking ukulele, and Luke plays favorites. He plays his favorite songs with his favorite friends, and Ukulele Alley is a family entertainment brand that I'm trying to generate. mostly so that I can do the goofy voice of Luke the Uke.
And you said that you were taking Luke to Bryant Lake Bowl, and people of all ages were
We were doing live
captivated?
shows. Yeah, we had a cartoon show that we were doing. It was a live show that was a matinee. We would do once a month at Bryant Lake Bowl, and we're going to be bringing it back. I don't know quite the venue, if it'll be one venue or several, but we are working on relaunching the live shows, along with some video content that we hope to have launching in the fall.
So that's something to look forward to.
Yes,
when
please
we're
do.
Following you. So give us your website again.
It's Liebermania.com.
Liebermania.com.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we're going to have a treat here. Tom is going to play a song that he wrote called Common Denominator. And listen to the words as we go out. We'll say goodbye, and you'll get to hear an original song that's gotten a lot of attention through the years, hasn't it?
Well, I just wanted to do some good. I just want people to take it to heart.
The ideas in this song are so pertinent for 2019. So thank you, Tom, so much for
Thank you, Mary.
coming down.
My
It's
pleasure.
been great to
Thank you.
get to learn more about you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. This is Tom and playing Common Denominator.
Don't fracture the fraction of the factitious faction. Illuminate the nuances too numerous to name. Do not neglect the power of the peaceful action, 'cause when you run the numbers, we are more or less the same. You be you, I'll be me, that's the way it's got to be. What's the difference of opinion in a minion or a mosque? We each have a point of view, and perhaps each one is true. Me and you make quite some pairs, we two, a Bartlett and a box. Gotta find that common denominator, find the common ground. Gotta find that common denominator, whole world round. Gotta find that common denominator, yours and mine. Gotta find that common denominator, that's the bottom line. Gotta find it. Bombs and bullets, good for nothing. Take your finger off the button. Just a way to wield the power. Make the money, place the blame. We're in this thing together. Good or bad, we make the weather. Change the way the wind is blowing. That's the gimmick of the game. Yes, we're in this thing together. Of a feather, every bird. Me and you, stuck like glue. Heed these words. It's the fiction in the oyster that casts the perfect pearl. Rid the fiction from your cloister. Make a move to save the world. Gotta find that common denominator, whole world round. Gotta find that common denominator, find the common ground. Gotta find that common denominator, yours and mine. Gotta find that common denominator, that's the bottom line.